Hi, and welcome to Mrs. Pam Reads. Today we are continuing in our story. Oh, move my seat a little bit. Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella. This will be part 2, section 5. And in the last video, Ray is still kind of trying to work up the nerve as he's traveling across the country to see J.D. Salinger. He's trying to figure out how is he going to do this, because this guy's probably going to think he's nuts. Right? Somebody just shows up on your doorstep and says, I'm supposed to take you to a ball game. Anyway, so that's kind of where we left it. He's still planning. I'm Ray Kinsella, I'll say confidently after I've rung his doorbell and he answers. Then I'll just stand and wait for his incredulous reply. At the same time, I can picture myself sitting for days in his driveway while my chin stubbles and the car interior begins to smell of orange peels and stale bread. I have breakfast at a Motel 6 near Holyoke, Massachusetts. It has rained in the night, and the parking lot is peppered with pink petals. As I drive toward Windsor, Vermont, I remember once driving through Iowa City with Karen at my side, over streets where trees formed a dizzying arch of pink and white. Petals fell silently on the car as we drove. Don't run over the flowers, she said to me. We stopped the car and Karen and I walked on the tender grass between sidewalk and street. Karen gathering the velvet droplets, pressing them to her face, scattering them over her head. I had to go to Iowa City again that night. As I tucked Karen into bed in her room with curtains covered in kittens and ballerinas, I said, is there anything I can bring you? Figuring on an ice cream bar, a Dr. Pepper, a slice of cheese pizza, which incredibly she likes to eat cold for breakfast. Bring me the flowers, Daddy, she said. I want some to touch when I wake up in the morning. That night after my meeting, I drove back to the spot we had visited by day. It was like a cathedral, the filtered light of stars and streetlights peeking through the thatch of blossoms and leaves. From the jumble in the back seat, I took a large styrofoam cup that had once held a cherry Coke and walked along the dark street rather sheepishly, scooping handfuls of petals from the overflowing gutters, wondering how I would explain myself if someone chanced to ask. I carried them home on the seat beside me like an urn of ashes and placed them on the night table beside Karen's bed. I watched her sleeping. She slept on her back, her right hand palm up beside her head. She looks like Annie run through a copying machine that reduces things in size. I bent and kissed her freckled nose. I will probably never love her more than I did at that moment. A tiny sound like a soap bubble bursting pops me back to reality. I stop at a rest area and try to regroup. I feel like an 8th grader bringing home a bad report card. In daylight, when I'm alone, what I'm about to do seems ludicrous. I don't have Annie to reassure me, to put her arm around my waist and her head on my shoulder and say, oh, love, if it makes you happy, you should do it. This land is foreign to me. The hills are blanketed with trees and foliage. I am used to being able to see for miles in any direction. And if I'm able to find a hill, being able to count the houses on nearby quarter sections. I grew up in Montana under the big sky, where the landscape outruns the vision. Here, I'm surrounded. Perhaps I won't be able to find him. The sky is clear. with a rumble of clouds on the horizon. I walk into the woods: oak, maple, white birch, conifer, poplar, the ground clothed in green crawling vines decorated with tiny purple flowers. Acorns covering the ground like pebbles. The trees are a golden green. Spring bristles all about me. There is more rock than I imagined, although the mountains, compared to the real mountains of the West, are only green hills. My impulse is to turn back, but I know I won't, even though it is so easy not to do something. Pretend you're selling life insurance, I tell myself as I wheel the car out onto the highway. As I near Windsor, anxiety crawls along my arms like ants. I am really quite shy. Why didn't the voice pick a real salesman for this job? I hated to contact people when I was selling life insurance. Only my empty bank account, my love for Annie, and knowing that at any time it was the only way I could stay in Iowa made me pick up the phone and don my optimistic and charming voice as I lured another potential commission check to lunch. I press on, make 2 trips back and forth through the town of Windsor, Vermont. At the edge of town, golden writing on a black sign reads, Windsor, birthplace of Vermont, 1777. As I cruise the main street, I see the Old South Church with 4 whitewashed Greco-Roman columns at its front. I pass the drugstore where I've read Salinger buys his newspapers. American flags everywhere. I pass the home of the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks, their hall white as a Klan convention. Interesting. And a covered bridge. I drive over it twice, windows down, enthralled by the rumble like stampeding horses, the earthy smell of this place permanently protected from the sun. Finally, I force myself out of the car, walk stiffly into the post office, and make the first of my inquiries. In reply to my hesitant question, a tired clerk with a pale face and silver spectacles reels off a list of directions I don't have time to assimilate before he has gone back to counting stamps. I lack the nerve to tell him I don't quite understand, that his accent is thick as porridge to my Midwestern ears. I'm sorry, I lived for many years in Vermont, so I'm finding this interesting. I have to make 3 more stops to ask directions. One lady raises her eyebrows and says she doesn't know where he lives, indicating by her tone that if she did, which she probably does, she wouldn't tell me anyway. An old man in a store that smells of oiled floorboards and coffee rolls his eyes. Not coffee rolls, coffee rolls his eyes, as he would at a grandson who has just asked an embarrassing question about sex and asks, why do you want to know? I'm a friend of his from the city, I stutter. If you was much of a friend, he'd have given you the directions himself, the old man says, and goes back to his newspaper. Eventually, a gas station attendant, upon hearing my request, walks from my window to the front of the car, notes my Iowa license plates, and walks back grinning. Lots of sirens and kerfluffle up around his place one evening about a month ago. He shakes his head solemnly. I just want to take a look, I say. He gives me directions for the 9-mile drive. I give him $1 for his trouble. Be careful. I will, I promise. The road along the New Hampshire border is mainly dirt, but beyond the private property sign, the surface is graveled. The new May leaves of the white birches and poplars dust the roof of my elderly Dachshund. The leaves, delicately veined as a baby's hands, are not full grown, but already gathered a film of dust. As I approach, I catch a brief glimpse of some brown siding and the sun glinting off window glass. I park next to the curving driveway that spirals up a steep hill. I explore gingerly, trying to walk without crunching gravel, ready to leap into the underbrush like a shy animal. A two-car garage is built into the side of the hill, like a bear's den at a zoo. One side of the garage stands open and empty. I look up through the lacy leaves and the sky seems very high. What I remember most vividly about the landscape is that on the way into Windsor, from a high point on the road, I could look out over the very area where I now sit. Everywhere was a smooth liquid green, with no indication of habitation, no sign of houses or towns. Yet, here I am, near a very real house, on a road with other houses on it that are all camouflaged by leaves. I walk back to the car, get in, roll down the window, and wait. The sweetness of honeysuckle fills my senses. The Jeep grinds up the road behind me, swings sharply into the driveway, sending up a spray of potato-colored dust. As if by afterthought, the Jeep brakes, spewing up more dust, and stops, with only the rear end visible, protruding from the ferns and low-hanging branches that swaddle the driveway. I wait, tense, as if my neck were tipped back, my mouth agape, and I was preparing for the dentist's needle. Ouch. A tall, graying man appears from the driver's side of the Jeep. He walks confidently, even a little arrogantly, towards my car. Panic falls over me like a net. It is as if my bills are due while my corn sways in dark rain. Is it Salinger? The only photographs I have seen are over 25 years old. The one in Mademoiselle shows a very ordinary young man with downcast eyes. The other, "What do you want?" the man says, frowning. His hair is gray and white, the color of street slush, and is combed straight back. There are tension lines, like two ruts between his brows. If it is him, he looks older than I imagined he would. "Are you J.D. Salinger? What can I do for you?" I want to talk to you." What a banal, hopeless thing to say. I have promised myself for close to 1,500 miles that I will say something brilliant, witty, charming, entice him into my car like I was sugar and he an ant. "I suppose you're a writer," he says and smiles, not unkindly, through snowy dentures. No, not a reporter," he says, taking a step back, as if the Dachshund and I were fire or boiling water. "No." "Then what is it you want?" He is wearing faded blue jeans, a khaki work shirt, and a spruce green down vest, like duck hunters wear. "I want you to come with me," I stutter, and let my trench coat covered left hand peek above the car's window ledge. It is wrong, all wrong, completely wrong. I feel like a rookie runner caught off first base by a wily pitcher, hung up in that vast area between first and second, fluttering back and forth like a wounded bird who knows he's doomed. What must he think? Is he used to dealing with crazies? I should have brought Annie. She could smile at him, bouncy as a red squirrel, and say, "My honey here has come to take you to a baseball game because he thinks you need to go." And he would believe her. Salinger frowns, and the stress lines between his brows deepen. His forehead is furrowed. There are long age lines from cheek to chin, making him resemble a tired but friendly, hound. Are you kidnapping me? Oh, please, that is such an awful word. I'm sorry. I planned things so differently. I wanted to convince you to come with me. I never wanted to have to do this. Then you are. I just want to take you for a drive. I have tickets for a baseball game. A baseball game, I say again, even though I emphasize the last line. It has no visible impact on him. And if I don't? His eyes look quickly to the jeep submerged in the forest. What can I possibly say? I am inarticulate as a teenager at the end of a first date, standing in the glare of the porch light, a father hulking behind curtains. I'm Ray Kinsella, I say, trying a new tack. My right hand is rigged under my trench coat. My left fingers spread, makes a musical motion as if playing a single note on the tinny car door with my middle finger. A note that I hope will spike a response with Salinger. He remains silent and looks around, and I know he is trying to decide whether or not to run. If he does, it's all over. I thought you might want to meet one of your own characters, I say. J.D. Salinger continues to frown, looks blank. I notice that he has large ears. Who? Ray Kinsella, I repeat. I was a character in one of your stories. A young girl in 1941 with no waist at all. So, he shrugs, was just a story, not even a very good one. Where did you dig it up? In a back issue of Mademoiselle at the University of Iowa Library. Well, Ray Kinsella, I suppose you're under psychiatric treatment? You really did write about me, I protest. The boy in the story is named Ray Kinsella. Sorry. Woo. Is named Ray Kinsella. What does it matter? I don't understand. He looks around, wishing, I'm sure, that someone or something would come by and distract me. There aren't many of us around. Kinsellas, that is. There are only 9 in the Manhattan telephone directory, I babble. I stopped and looked on my way here. In 1946 or 7, whenever you wrote the story, there were probably less. Yes, there probably were. Still, it's just a name. I don't see. It's my name. You used my brother's name in Catcher in the Rye, Richard Kinsella. He was the boy who gave rambling speeches, and everybody yelled digression at him. I remember that, but I don't understand why it is important. Why should I be thrilled to meet someone with a name I used once in a story? I write fiction. But surely you knew someone by that name. What if I did? Salinger stops, squints his left eye slightly. It is as if he realizes that arguing with me is like trying to dissuade an overzealous missionary. He eyes me carefully, scratches behind his right ear. Let me see if this can get me a little more light. Not really. Perhaps we could talk about it, he says, and I sense that in his desperation, he has called up words that are hidden unknowingly inside him, like scissors lost in a sewing basket. I picture him alone all these many years, watching endless reruns of Emergency One, Barnabas Jones, Policewoman, Cannon, Marcus Welby, and The 11th Hour, in which the good doctor, officer, detective, or paramedic cautiously approaches the disturbed person and says, not patronizingly, but with a calm air of authority, perhaps we could talk about it. I've come to take you to a baseball game, I say doggedly. Why? In my anxiety, I see a grotesque cartoon of a pale, lumpish blob of a person with a flashlight bulb over his head. It is as if I'm trying to pile gifts in front of Salinger in hopes of distracting him from my real purpose. I conjured up my last trick. I've brought you a baseball, I chirp, and reach my left arm over my right and open the glove compartment. The ball rests in the safe darkness behind the maps, sunglasses, and a couple of paperback books. I pull the whole mass onto the floor, duck my head, and eventually pop up with the ball. I hand it out the window to him. He reaches for it, then pulls his hand back like an adult does when a child tries to hand him a sticky, drool-covered toy. It's yours, I say. I've carried it all the way from Iowa. I'm from Iowa, you know. No, I didn't know, says Salinger. He steps back and sideways and checks my license plate, just in case I don't know where I'm from. I am still offering the ball in my extended hand. Please, I say. It was hit by Shoeless Joe Jackson, a home run ball. Oh, and that's my little tab there, which means we're going to stop for this video. Well, we know how the movie goes, so we know J.D. Salinger is going to eventually go with him, but the enticing could be a little bit interesting. Thank you for joining me for Mrs. PM Reads. I hope you're enjoying this baseball story. I love baseball and Vermont and the Yankees. Oh, he doesn't like the Yankees. All right, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.